Welcome back to Tumor Board with Hilario and Anish. I'm your co-host Anish.
And I'm Hilario.
Today, I'm pretty excited because we're going to take a little bit of a break from medical school and kind of the grittiness of residency to talk about something a little bit more fun and definitely as important, which is relationships, dating, and just old relationship management during med school and residency. And we're going to talk about kind of the ups and downs of relationships in residency medical school. So to do this, we invited two guests. So our first guest is Dr. Rebecca Shulman. Rebecca did her medical school at Temple University School of Medicine. She then graduated her intern year at Crozer Chester and subsequently started residency in radiation oncology at Fox Chase, where she is now a good friend of ours and our senior resident. And our second guest is Allison. Allison is the wife of Hilario, and she is currently doing her PhD and almost done with that. So just to give kind of layout of the land, Rebecca met her husband Will in medical school. He's also a resident, and she has a very adorable 1-year-old daughter. And Allison and Hilario met when Hilario was in college. They've been married for 5 years, and they're living the low tier of the Dink life, which is dual income, no kids. And Rebecca has been married for about 3 years now, if I am not mistaken. So thank you both for joining.
Yeah, welcome, guys. Welcome. and just so we let our audience know, this is going to be a two-part series, right? So at some point, we'll bring you guys the second half of our conversation with these lovely ladies that we have here. So I just kind of Anish kind of brush a little bit about why you guys met your spouses. But can you tell us a little bit about what it was like, and dating someone in medical school? For Rebecca, yours might look different because you were dating a fellow medical student, and Allison, you were dating someone who was a medical student, but you were not in medicine. So what was that like for you guys in the beginning? So Rebecca, you can go first.
Okay, I was going to say, should I start? So I started dating. So my husband Will. First year of medical school, first semester of medical school, we met in anatomy lab. Actually, our cadavers were right next to each other, so it was very, very romantic.
So romantic.
Yeah, very. So we, I guess, met like it was the first month, really, and we were quote unquote officially dating by December. So, and the rest is history. We've dated and got married. Well, we got engaged at the end of medical school, and married the following year after my intern year.
Who made the first move?
That's a good question. I guess it was really Will's first move, I would say. We exchanged a few flirtatious looks, both of us in class, but
the lab.
You mean the lab, like over the cadavers,
bodies. But I would say he probably made the first move. He approached me at, in medical school, we have these after exam get-togethers at bars or restaurants. And I think he approached me there first. So.
Okay. What about you, Miss Allison Yankey?
Hello. Yes. Yeah. So Hilario, we met. It's actually a funny story because neither of us really remember very well the first time we met. We've talked about this a lot. We were at the same church, not the same college, but our colleges. A lot of people went to this one church on a different college campus, and there was a summer where we were both in Philly. So we were in like a Bible study together, but I don't remember Hilario. Hilario doesn't remember me. We have the t-shirts to prove it. So like it did happen, but neither of us recall it at all. So the first time I remember meeting Hilario was a couple years later, and it was when he was like applying to medical schools, and I just kind of in a flirtatious, kind of like nagging way was like, well, you can't go anywhere but Temple because I was at Temple for undergrad and he was at Drexel. And obviously, you know, school spirit and undergrad is like the thing. So I was very much in his face. You can't go somewhere else. You have to go to Temple. Temple's the best for all of these ridiculous reasons. You know, we have this great football team, yada yada. And then I left Philly for the summer, and when I came back in August, he was still there. And I was like, oh, okay, so it worked, right? You stayed in Philadelphia. And I was doing research in a microbiology lab on the same campus as he was starting medical school. So, and I didn't know anyone up there because it's a different campus from our main campus. And I was like, well, we should just, you know, get lunch. And like Rebecca said, the rest is history.
So, Allie, you made the first move then.
I'd like to think so, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's debatable because she didn't say, hey. So she said, hey, I'm up in the labs at the medical school and I do research there. And I don't really know anyone, but she didn't kind of left it like open. And I said, well, we can do lunch, you know. So I took her to the cafeteria in at Temple.
Classic student move.
Yeah. I took her to Temple cafeteria, and you know, we started talking, and we really didn't want to stop talking to each other. There is a brief period, which is like a joke, where she got sick and went home to her hometown for I think a period of 2 weeks or so, where you know, I guess because she was sick, she wasn't talking or responding to any text. So I thought she ghosted me, but a couple of weeks later, I got a text from someone that I got bronchitis, and it was her. It's like, okay, well, I guess she really didn't, you know, ghost me. So I went back and started giving her attention again.
Definitely.
Yeah. Anish, so Rebecca is married. I'm married. Where are you at in terms of the relationships spectrum from single to dating to being married and all that kind of stuff?
Definitely far from being married. I am single. I've been single for about 8 months or so now, I think. I think it's been about 8 months. Yeah, so that's where I am.
Yeah, okay. And you dating?
I did enter medical school in a relationship. That relationship ended within the first year of medical school. And then I didn't really seriously date someone until a couple years ago. We're together for about a year and a half, and now I find myself single again. So yeah, it's been different.
Right. Okay. Rebecca, you were dating someone in medical school. Can you kind of tell us how that was like in terms of what was easy and what was difficult about? Because I know, like, you know, we have to spend a lot of time studying, and maybe some of the easy things will be to be in the library together. But what did that look like for you, and what were the difficult aspects of your relationships in the beginning?
I would say that overall, I really liked being married to someone and dating someone in medicine. It is nice, or I guess I should say in medical school, it was nice to have someone on a similar schedule and someone that I could vent to about all the annoyances of medical school and the stresses of, you know, going through step one studying and applying for residency. So overall, I enjoyed that aspect. I would say The pro is very similar to the con. So, even though you have someone that completely understands where you're coming from, they're in a very similar position. So, certainly when it came down to couples matching, I was in radiation oncology and Will's in interventional radiology, which are, programs that are historically pretty competitive and there aren't too many of them. So that was definitely very stressful. And Hilaria, you hear me harp about this all the time in the resident room, that and how lucky he is, Allie. I tell him all the time.
Okay.
He knows. That, the medical schedule, being with someone in medicine it's a pretty inflexible field. So, I would say it didn't bother me or it wasn't as difficult during medical school. But certainly, once you have a kid, it can be very challenging when you have someone who's on a very similar schedule that is very inflexible. So the pro and the con is, one of the same almost, I would say.
You mentioned quite a few different things. I want to take it back to when you were in medical school first. What percentage of your dates with Will were study dates? Just out of curiosity.
That's a good question. I don't really have very many memories of studying with Will. I mean, it's funny. We were talking about this relatively recently, and he said we always studied together. So maybe I should have had him on the podcast too, so you can hear the actual truth.
Yeah.
But, I don't think very many of our dates were actually studying. We would definitely study late. So, if it came down to, cramming for a test, we were always studying together. But I still think we made time for real dates, not just studying. And I did study with other people as well, not just with Will. I think that changed a little bit more as time went on. In the beginning of med school, I would study more with other people. It's kind of the format at medical school. You have these study groups and anatomy groups and things like that. But as it went on, I guess, we were really studying separately, but in the same room, I would say.
Let me ask you this. So, obviously it's really great to have that support and someone who understands you, but in medical school, you end up having the same schedule, maybe the same classes together. You're with them such a large portion of your day. How did you kind of find time to find some alone time or time just away just for yourself?
So, I mean, we would see each other obviously very frequently in medical school, but we would also, not necessarily sit next to each other in class all the time, if we weren't going in together. So yeah, I understand what you're saying. But we definitely still, had our separate doctoring groups and things like that where we were on slightly different schedules. And certainly when it came down to rotations, we were on different schedules. But in terms of, finding time to do things separately, I think that just came with varying different schedules. Will would, go to the gym. I would take a different class, an extracurricular type of yoga class or something like that. So we would, I think the key is having separate interests and hobbies too, and putting them into your schedule, which can be really hard. But I think we did an okay job at it.
I think better than okay. So Allie, so it looks like you really started spending more time with Hilario when he was kind of starting medical school, right?
Mhm.
When he was applying, and then started officially dating after he enrolled. Did you anticipate the kind of challenge it would be to date someone in medical school?
Um, I don't think it was actually. I think our situation, like similar to Rebecca and Will, has everybody's does has like unique qualities to it.
Mm,
So when we started dating, I was entering my junior year of undergraduate, and my bachelor's is in biochemistry. So there wasn't really until like my last semester of college, I didn't have an easy semester. I was always taking really challenging courses. And so, kind of similar to medical school, I was also always studying. Whether when I was not in class, I was also like in a library. And
mm.
so, when we started dating, I just transitioned from like my spot in the main campus library to his spot in the Temple Medical School library. Um, not only because he was there, but also it's just such a nice campus compared to
Mhm.
some of the older buildings at main campus Temple that were much older. That it was just a new building. It was beautiful. There were windows. Like you can't beat that compared to the stacks in like the middle of a undergraduate campus. So a lot of our experience, like the first year we were dating, was very similar because we were both studying. I think the only time things were very different when we were before we got married was his step one study period because that was a very easy semester for me. I was taking like yoga and aikido just to get through that last semester while I was applying to graduate schools, and he was studying so intensely that it kind of took me by surprise, the level of just not how unavailable he was. So at that point, we there were times where he had physical therapy and I went with him to physical therapy to help him study, and that counted in my books as a date because during steps it was like either I'm around while you're studying or I'm not seeing you. That was the kind of the first like culture shock of this is very different from just two college kids dating each other. Yeah.
Wait, so you were getting physical therapy, and Allie was present during the
Yeah,
sessions,
y-
like
yeah.
asking you questions or flipping through flashcards?
I mean, yeah. She
Yes.
would do that. So I would take out of my first aid textbook and or some flashcard, and then she would just kind of quiz me while I was in physical therapy. I actually don't remember, but I, 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 I will probably have to guess that it has something to do with soccer, right? That's why I was doing physical therapy.
Yeah,
So I
definitely.
was doing physical therapy. I had a concussion from a skiing incident too as well, and then someone hit me in the face with a soccer ball while I
Ooh.
was playing Tremiro. So I was
Mm.
doing PT, studying for STEP, and then so for me going to PT actually was kind of like a nice break in the middle of like studying, and then I also kind of got the opportunity to, an excuse to kind of have a run to just someone to quiz me on what I was actually studying. So it was nice, nice little lunch break that we had during that
Mhm.
time. I would say that, for the most part, like, yeah, she's right, because like she was at a med school like every time. Even Derek, one of our librarians, initially thought that Allison was a medical student.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a medical student that I was dating, and so that kind of tells you how often that we study in the med school together. Yeah.
And how
Yeah.
much you
Uh,
like the library? Maybe not
Yes.
you, but
oh no, I didn't like the library.
how
It
much
was a
she like the
necessity.
library?
Yeah.
Yeah.
um, Allie,
Well,
uh, how did you navigate that time when you said Hilary was so unavailable and kind of took you? It was a real surprise to you. How did you, as like his partner, kind of get through that and feel that time?
Yeah, so I think what I did was kind of find the balance between being supportive and being independent, because you can't like you can't just spend time with somebody who's studying all the time. That's really boring at a certain point because they're not able to talk to you. They're not able to hang out with you for real. So I had to. So there was a lot of like, you know, I would just go and do things with my friends. I would spend time at my, you know, apartment with my roommates and kind of get that last little bit of like the college experience while I had it. And then also making time to just kind of, you know, make food and just take the train up to the library and drop it off and be like, let's eat, take 30 minutes, eat, and then I'll go and I'll see you, you know, a couple days, or like not a couple days, like a couple hours later when you're actually finished up here. So I think finding that balance was important because you can't just wait around for somebody to have all your fun, and you kind of have to just have that independent streak when you're dating somebody who's in medicine and you're not. Yeah.
So, Rebecca, so you talked about how you guys spend time, together in the library, and even though you don't remember that, William remembers that you guys spend a lot of time together studying. But the outside of the medical school time, let's say during your first year of summer, right? Summer break where you're not in school, or the times like Christmas time, like how did you guys keep your relationship going, and how did you spend your time?
Well, fortunately, Will and I are both locals, so it really wasn't that challenging. So I went to medical school at Temple. My sister went to medical school at Penn, and we were in the same year. I took a gap year; she didn't. So I lived with family, and my parents live about an hour north of Philadelphia, and Will's family lives a little less than an hour south of Philadelphia. So, even when it was summer or it was holidays, I can't remember exactly when we started spending holidays together, but I feel that it was probably, after the first year of dating. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure actually it was after the first year of dating. So we started dating. It was 2018, November, December-ish. And then the following year, that summer, I actually took him to Puerto Rico to meet my extended family. So I'm pretty sure by, a year or so of dating, we were spending the holidays together. So, yeah, I don't think it was that challenging, and some of it was logistically sort of simple because, again, us visiting our families is close.
Yeah, and so just so I know, when you were in medical school, was the person you're dating also a medical student?
Yes, at a different school.
At a different school. Okay, so how did you guys make it work during that time?
Well, well, short story is we didn't. I think so it is actually really funny when I think back on it. So I'm not sure if maybe Rebecca, you've kind of heard this term, and maybe Ali here as well. Like November is considered like Breaksgiving, and
is it?
Did you hear? Did you hear? No. Okay. So when I started medical school, I heard that term, and I asked, what that means, and they're like, dude, if you come in with a relationship and you make it till end of November or end of around like December, you're done. You'll get married. Don't worry. But if you don't, but otherwise it's going to end around Thanksgiving time.
That's probably.
And
what do you say?
I said that seems I buy that.
Yeah, okay. And it's an interesting story. With that time intensiveness of school, just from all the hours studying and the work required. Also, me being in a little bit of a new environment, wanting to, meet new people, make new friends, and I felt like that was important for my own sanity, and just because I wanted to, meet new people in medical school. I think that it highlighted issues we were already having and just kind of exacerbated them. And I think
Gotcha.
it did that for other people as well. I
Mm-hmm.
will share one story. It was a funny story. So we had anatomy lab, and we're
Mm-hmm.
walking from our building. A lot of the students, basically 95%, lived in 103 buildings, and we all had
Mm-hmm.
that same schedule first year. So walking from our building to anatomy, and I just end up happening to walk with two of my lab mates, my group mates,
Mm-hmm.
and he asks me, my friend and lab partner asked me like, "Hey man, like how was your weekend?" And I was like, it wasn't the best. Like my girlfriend and I broke up, and he was like, "Oh man, I'm sorry for you." My girlfriend and I also broke up.
Oh no.
And then there was a girl who was hearing this conversation, and she was like, "Man, like my boyfriend and I broke up." I don't know. I just think it was really funny. It was like very random, but it does happen.
It does happen,
But
right? So
yeah, it does happen.
if you survive November, you're good, huh,
The
student?
moral of the story, yeah.
Moral of the story: survive November, you make it. All right, all right. And Rebecca, I mean, I guess, did you feel like just dating someone in medicine that came with any particular sacrifices? Because I feel like we tend to think that if you have someone in medicine, right, you just kind of have the same schedule and you kind of do the same thing, so it's not gonna really make any dent on your schedule in medical school and how you study. Were there Was there any way that you felt like there were challenges that came with dating a classmate?
I don't think I felt that way in medical school. I have no recollection of ever feeling like I was making a sacrifice during that time from
Mm-hmm.
2014 to 2018.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good, good. So overall, you felt like you that wasn't just like you like this person, but it was also very convenient, and especially if his family lived around the area, you guys could just kind of drive and see each other if you needed to. All right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty easy from that perspective, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. How about you, Miss Allison? What do you feel like dating a medical student? And I mean, you spend time with me in the library for the most part, but your family lives in the Poconos, right? And kind of holidays is seems to be is kind of a big deal for your family, right? So how do you feel like that kind of dating someone in medical school and and trying to juggle all of that?
I think holidays wasn't too difficult just because we were like such a new relationship the first year that it was that if you came it was fun, and if you didn't it was very like normal not to have a very recent boyfriend with you at the holidays. That's kind of to be taken for
Mm-hmm.
granted. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm having like a moment, but I can't remember if it was I think it was the first summer that we were dating that I actually did the internship away. So the
Mm-hmm.
first summer where kind of I didn't realize it at the time, it was going to be your only summer off in all of medical school. I had
Mm-hmm.
got an internship in New Mexico, and so I was away for 3 months. And that was really challenging because it felt very much like the the shoe was on the other foot of one of us was having more fun and I was in the lab, and I loved where I was, but I definitely had my hands full with being in a new place and being with new people. And then, we were on, it was what, 2014, so it was like Snapchat was the way to communicate with people. And I would get snaps of like you playing soccer and you in the gym and you with all your friends going out to these places that we like to eat. And I was like, in the lab with these two new people that I just met that we'll see if we're friends. So that was challenging for sure because, you know, I think you always expect it to be one way where like the medical student has all of the challenging schedules and the challenging things in their life, but in reality, most relationships, everybody has things that come up that require the other person to be more flexible. And I think that was the first time it was me who had the things that came up.
Mm-hmm. So, do any of you guys remember your first dates at all in medical school?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I do.
and
Yep.
Anish, what about you, Anish?
I do, but yeah, I do.
All right. So, can you guys share what your first day was like with William and Rebecca, and then Allison, I can share that story too, but it's better probably coming from you.
So, my first date with William, I would say, was not very conventional. So, he, as he would say, was looking for something that could potentially spark my interest. So he heard that I had signed up for a yoga class at Temple at the medical school. So I think he took that as me being really interested in yoga, but it happened to be my first yoga class ever when I started Temple. So I think he was researching things and he came across these yoga classes at the Art Museum. I don't know if you guys ever went to those in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that sounds like a neat idea.
Yeah, so he it's funny. He I guess was prepping himself to approach me and ask me if I'd be interested in going. Um, and I ran into him on the train that morning. So he was forced to ask me if I would be interested in going much sooner than he was prepared to do so. So he did. Nervous William did, and we went, and it was good. It was like an activity to do. We walked around the museum for a little bit. We did the yoga class. He's actually pretty good at yoga. I was impressed.
Oh.
And then after that went well, he asked me shortly after on a dinner date, a more conventional dinner date.
Nice.
Do you two still do yoga together?
We've tried. It's funny, he hates yoga. We used to.
Why?
It hurts his joints. I don't know.
I got you.
So we actually had yoga classes, free yoga classes in the building we just moved out of in Philly. So we went to a few of those, and he was over it pretty quickly. So we're not doing yoga to this day, but
right.
It was a good start.
Nice. That's a key story. I didn't know William was very flexible. He always seems to me.
That's how I learned.
Yeah, that's funny. What about you, Miss Allison?
So I think this has been contentious as well as to which was our actual first date. But
okay.
I consider the dinner, so like Hilario was saying, I got ill and I left Philadelphia without saying anything as a thief in the night. When I got back, we went on a proper dinner date. And at the time, I kind of thought we were just still like hanging out. It wasn't really until I got there and we started walking to the restaurant that it was like much more apparent to me that this was a date and not just a continuation of the prior friendship of like getting lunch in the cafeteria or getting food with friends, that kind of thing. So I think that was our first date. However, I didn't know until we were approaching the restaurant. So is that what you would say, Hilario?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the same day that we went mini golfing, right?
So mini golf was later. Mini golf was a couple weeks later.
Okay. So I think mini golf to me is our first day. So that one was like, you kind of abandoned ship, and then you came back 2 weeks later, and let's see if this is going to really happen again. And so let's get dinner together type thing for me.
Okay.
But you,
Oh, I
yeah,
so
okay,
appreciate that because we're on the same page. Because I definitely thought mini golf was our first like actual date. Because and the reason I remember this one is because I still have the ticket, the ticket stub of going to mini golf, and two, I was very nervous about it, and I wasn't nervous about the dinner. I was just like, we're just hanging out. But I was very nervous about mini golf, and so like my friends helped me prep my outfit, and then I was so like such a kid. I was like, I held your hand. I held your hand when we left mini golf, and I felt so like I made my intentions known because I held your hand, and that felt like it was okay. To me, that was our first date because I held your hand.
Gotcha. Oh, and do you have any first date stuff?
Thank you.
That's really great.
We'll skip my story. We'll skip that. We'll skip that.
It's good.
Okay. Did you and Hilario have like a standing date night in medical school where you make sure that even with your busy schedule, his busy schedule, you definitely try and meet and kind of do something fun?
I don't know. We didn't. I think we just hung out so often, and one of the other things too was that because I was at the library a lot, I made friends with a lot of Hilario's med school friends. And so there was a lot of group events going on all the time, and it was really fun to just hang out with people. And so one of the things that I've always liked about Hilario and I's relationship is that we're always in the mood to just like do things with other people. And I love hanging out just the two of us, but often it was just the two of us watching a show or playing, board games together or watching, soccer. But most of the time when we would go out, it was because there were more extroverted people in our lives that planned things that we then showed up to.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay, so you were both on the same page on that, so that's good.
Pretty early on, yeah.
If you leave us to our devices, we'll sit home and just veg on the couch because we are always just so busy. So when it gets to the weekend, it's just let me stay on the couch and just watch soccer. And on the weekend, sometimes I go out to go play soccer, in a league. So when I come back, I'm like, very tired, and I was like, I'm not going anywhere for the rest of the week, that kind of thing. Yeah.
That definitely sounds like you.
Yeah. So so at this point in our conversation, Rebecca was a medical student, dating a medical student, and overall it was convenient. It doesn't seem that there was too many sacrifices or too many constraints on how much time she had to study because you guys were in the same school, you guys were doing almost the same thing. So in a lot of ways for people in medical school, right, it is easier and probably better to some degree, dating someone in your medical school. But it is also possible to date someone across different medical schools, and people do that. And on the other hand, you don't have to date a doctor, right? I think there is some advantages, and maybe Ali, you can speak to that about the advantages of at least for me, actually, but maybe I should be saying that. The advantages
I dated a doctor. I dated a med student.
Right. Dating someone who was in medicine, I think that was probably something that I was conscious about. I don't think I really wanted to date a fellow medical student necessarily because I didn't want us talking about the same stuff. It just seemed like I like medicine, but I don't actually like to talk about medicine socially. So for me, it seemed like that would be something that like will really cramp my style with this person I'm trying to kind of build a life with. But I guess like Ali, before we kind of switch the conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about when you guys when you guys knew this person that you're dating was really the one, and you're really going to move the relationship to the next step. Do you have any kind of like difficulties that you think you had when you're dating a medical student, which is me, of course. Yeah.
Which is you. Well, we didn't date for very long, so it's kind of hard to say because we actually got married right before Hilario's third year of medical school. And so that was a major transition for our relationship, but it was also a major transition for medical school, right? Because that's when you guys start your rotations and you go from being a student to being more of like a practitioner in some kind of capacity. And I think that was, if we had been dating, that would have been challenging in and of itself because, you know, your schedules change on like a month to month or 6 week to 6 week basis. And you just like, you kind of get in the rhythm of like, oh, okay, Hilario is working, you know, until 7 p.m. or until 8 p.m. most days of the week. And then he's home or he's available. And then you get in that rhythm and then it changes. Like, never mind, that changed. Now you're doing these other hours, this other location. When we got married, Hilario was on a rotation in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. So we had a house to move into together, and he was not available. He was in a dorm room. So that was kind of a challenging season altogether because it was so many transitions at once.
What was the...
Sorry, if you guys can hear any whining in the background, it's the dog that we own. His name is Mars, and he really doesn't like it when we're not talking to him. So just so the audience are aware, we do have a very needy dog where maybe you can bring him into the screen so that he can get some attention. We're trying and get him included in this.
Where's Mars?
Yeah,
Aww,
yeah, that's Mars. Yeah. So Mars is a German Shepherd Husky mix. We do have another dog. Her name is Juno. She's a very good dog, and she doesn't whine. Mars is okay. Mars is okay.
Whines more.
Come on.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
small. So.
I'd like to counter your one point about how if you're with someone in medicine, you go home and talk about medicine. I would say that William and I do not talk about medicine unless we have something upsetting that happened at work. You know, if we have a very, you know, sad case or something like that, something that really bothers us. But so I never really understood when people said that because I feel like, I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, because I feel if you have a very difficult or challenging day or patient, you're still going to go home to Allie and talk about it.
Right.
And, you know, you may not go into some certain amount of detail, but the details don't really matter too much usually. So I get what you're saying. I've heard it many times. But I feel like depending on the personality, you know, I don't talk about medicine socially pretty much ever. And only, you know, professionally. So, so yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. I guess maybe I would rephrase. I didn't want that for me because I had that concern that in my conversations, our biases and our focus would probably like lean so heavily on medicine. And perhaps like even if I'm talking about patient stuff or things that are happening in, you know, to my patients or something that went wrong or something that was good or whatever it is, maybe I wanted like a non-medical perspective or someone who didn't have that lens of medicine to kind of get a different perspective on it. But I do agree with you that, you know, it doesn't have to be that if you're dating someone who's in medicine that most of your conversations even will be about medicine. Yeah, I agree with that.
Rebecca, do you feel like that takes conscious effort, or do you feel like you and Will are just naturally able to kind of talk about other things? So I think every couple is different.
Yeah, I don't think we bring it up for pleasure. So I think when we bring it up, all my memories, even like the last week or two, when we're talking about something medical, it's usually the way I imagine it is it wouldn't matter if one of us was in medicine or not. If you're talking to me about some upsetting experience he had, or I'm talking about something I'm applying to, they're very general things that don't necessarily require a lot of background in medicine. And I think our fields are so different. So when I talk, radiation oncology and interventional radiology are extremely different. And as you guys know, radiation is it's very niche, and most people in medicine, we don't learn about radiation oncology in medical school at all. Trying occasionally, I'll give him a little in radiation to try and explain something that was bothering me. So again, it doesn't require, going to medical school to understand what I'm trying to communicate.
Do you feel like during the time you were with Hilario when he was in medical school, do you feel like not being in medicine, it was difficult for you to kind of understand kind of his day to day, what he was going through, and did you feel like you enjoyed talking to him about kind of the specifics about his rotations and things like that?
I think rotations were difficult to understand from an outside perspective as to like what that entailed, because it seemed very nuanced in that like it's a rotation, everybody goes, but it's kind of up to you and the people around you to make it either good or bad. Whereas that's kind of not how classes are, right? In a classroom setting, everyone's getting the same lecture and you're all kind of struggling with the same exact problems. Rotation seemed very individual. And so I think that was confusing or difficult to understand because it was much more interpersonal than classes. And if you haven't had, especially as two students, if neither of you had a full-time job before, this is the first time one of the two people in the relationship is experiencing kind of workplace dynamics. And that's so challenging for everybody, but it's in the context of you're not getting paid for this. You can't leave. These people are very senior to you and you need to impress them. So there was a lot of interpersonal stuff that because I didn't have the experience, I would just not really know how to advise or say like, well, just tell them to stop. Like, I don't understand why you're going to allow that attending to talk to you that way, Hilario. Not understanding the culture of like being a med student in an operating room or in the ER or something. And yeah, so that was just a weird dynamic to like figure out how to manage. And because often I was the only non-medical person at like a dinner table, I basically just set the ground rule with, especially because William and Rebecca might not have had the issue of not speaking about medicine outside of work, but Hilario's friends really enjoyed talking about medicine outside of medical school.
I do have a lot of very nerdy friends.
Yeah.
It is a thing. It is a thing when, I mean, we do it too sometimes, except we tend to do it in like a venting process, but when we it happens.
Right, and I think that's why Nish, you asked the question whether that was a natural thing or a conscious thing that you guys were doing, because sometimes people just talk about the things that they do at work so much that it gets annoying. But anyway, Allison, you continue.
So I had a, ground rule whenever everybody got together. I would say, okay, guys, you've got 10 minutes or you got 15 minutes, get it all out, talk about, sarcoidosis and all the cool things you're learning and all the different attendings you've come into contact with, and then let's have a real conversation. And I would look at my clock, and it would go on for 20, 25 minutes because I didn't know how to stop them. But eventually we would all get to the place where we would be able to talk about things that weren't super above my head that I couldn't participate. So we got there.
I like that rule, Allie. I like that rule. I may have to employ that when I meet certain people.
And it's definitely different now with people in residency because it's a job, because there's so much more than just interesting factoids that you want to share. It's your actual life more than it is just learning things. So it's not the same.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're probably a little bit more matured now, right? About how
definitely.
When it's appropriate. You're a med student, all you talk about is you think you're the center of the world, and everything you're learning is so cool. But when you get to residency, part of it is you're over it a little bit. It's okay, this is not too cool to talk about anymore. So I'll just learn when it's appropriate to bring up medicine and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I think I felt more like I needed to show people that I was in medicine when I was a med student. And now that I'm probably a little bit more capable than a med student, I'm I don't want anybody to know I'm in medicine.
So you mentioned that when you got married, it was the start of the Hilario's rotations. Did you feel, and all the transitions in his schedule was very difficult. Did you feel like it was challenging for you to be flexible with him? And did you feel like the relationship? Did you feel like that was a very difficult time for your relationship, and kind of how did you address that situation?
Yes, I think that was pretty difficult. I think because it was just every transition possible. I don't think I would advise two people to be in medical school, start graduate school, and get married all in one summer. I don't think that would be my advice, because that was just so many transitions all at once for both of us. So I didn't really have the option to be super flexible, because I was also starting a huge part of my career in graduate school, and at the time the coursework was very challenging. It was very all-consuming, on top of also doing laboratory research and trying to suss out where I wanted to spend the next couple of years doing research. So I think it just came down to both of us having to I think everybody has very high expectations for that newlywed phase of closeness and figuring out how to be a team in all situations, but we didn't have any kind of consistency in life around us. And so I think that period was just a period of both of us kind of being okay with, we don't really have a handle on this right now, and it's a season of life that we're going to have to get through. And then in a couple of years, we'll look back on it and say oh, wow, that was wild. That was really challenging for both of us in so many ways. And now I think that that's happened. I think, especially when Hilario started at Fox Chase, not the intern year of residency, because that was also rotations and also not what he wanted to do. But once he was in a position where things were more consistent, the people around him were consistent, then we were able to kind of hit our stride of, having date nights and having more routine life that most people who both have regular jobs would be able to have. And I've really enjoyed that, because constant change, I think, is really hard for everybody. That's why babies are tough, because they are just constantly changing your entire world, right, Rebecca? That's kind of the first year. And so that was the first couple of years for us. Yeah.
Mhm. For you as his partner, what was the most difficult rotation um, that he was on in regards to kind of all those challenges? Was it surgery? Was it kind of when he was doing all his night shifts?
I don't think there was one in particular that was very especially difficult. Uh, I think his radiation oncology rotations were challenging because they really mattered to him, and so he was on a little bit of a on edge, not in a bad way, but like showing up being very aware, being alert in every situation during both his away rotations and also at Temple, and that was very draining. I think going from I'm here to learn to I'm here to represent myself really well was a pretty big challenge, and I think took a lot out of Hilario. That was had really nothing to do with the actual medicine, but everything to do with what the situation was for him. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that kind of transferred over to residency as well, where when in the situations that really he needs to put his 100% in, he puts like 110%, and then that can be, really draining really fast.
Yeah.
So I know it's a lot of challenges, but I'm sure it was obviously worth it. When did you two know that you were with?
Oh, Rebecca. Okay.
Rebecca's making a funny hand shoulder moving gesture right
Yeah,
now.
it's like it's up in the air whether it's worth it or not. That's what you're saying, right? Yeah.
Let her decide.
So when did you two know? When did you two know that um, the person you're with was the one you want to spend the rest of your life with?
Rebecca,
Rebecca,
maybe
how
you can
about
go
you?
Oh gosh.
first.
I don't really remember having an aha moment. I remember my dad actually telling me he had an aha moment. And
Oh, okay,
he didn't
Papa
tell me until
Shulman,
after I was married, actually. But
of course.
I told you guys earlier that I took Will to Puerto Rico to visit my extended family.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents were there, my sister was there, one of my sisters was there.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way I guess we were interacting and behaving, and how Will was treating my grandmother, and the personal gift that he gave her before we left. My dad had shared with my uncle there that we were going to get married, and he tells me this, after. Um, but I don't actually remember having an aha moment. We were dating all of medical school. You get to a point in medical school where you have to have a discussion, which
Mm-hmm.
is around match time. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of couples either break up or stay together around that time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't. I think it was a lot unsaid for us, because I don't think there was ever any question that we were going to match. We were going to couples
Mm-hmm.
match, and we were both interested in getting married. But we were certainly
Mm-hmm.
forced to talk about it at that time. So when we
Right.
did, that sort of, led to discussion of, all right, when should we plan on engagement and
Right.
stuff like that. So,
Right.
um, I can't tell you I remember a specific moment,
Right.
unfortunately.
So what about William made you say, okay, well, I am probably gonna marry this guy, like as opposed to, okay, well, it's match time, and I don't know, there's this and that, that I don't really wanna, do with William or whatever. So maybe this would be a good point to like go our separate ways. What about him? You know?
I mean, obviously I love him. He's my husband.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it didn't even come into question of us. There was no thought, even a flicker in my head of us breaking up.
Wow.
We were I know we're very comfortable with each other, obviously. Comfortable people put a negative spin on that, but we were very comfortable with one another. We trusted each other a lot. We had very similar values, long term and short term. He obviously got along very well with my family. I lived with my sister. He lived with us, basically. So, I think like anyone who goes into a marriage, he certainly checked off all the boxes of things that I was looking for in a relationship with someone who I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. So, there was never a moment, I think, for either of us where we thought about going our separate ways.
Right. Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Over to you, my lovely wife. That's me setting you up to say nice things about me.
Yeah, seriously.
After that lovely story from Rebecca, I don't think there's any room for anything else. But no, I remember missing Hilario a lot when I was away, when I did my internship, and I think that was kind of the first time that for me it clicked that I'm always somebody who has been very close with my family, and to have missed this like one particular person more than I missed my hometown, or I missed my the things that we would be doing in the summer that I was missing out on, that was pretty eye-opening. That this particular person who, we just spent like a couple of months studying together. Yes, he's so cute. And not really like having that much of a exciting life together was the thing that I was missing the most. Was kind of the moment where I was like, yeah, this seems more than just a really nice friendship or a season in my life, because again, I was still in college, so it's not super normal for it's not the norm to be very committed to getting married right away. I think a lot of people want to prolong it, maybe get their feet under them in terms of their career, and that's great too. Dating has its own challenges that marriage doesn't have, and vice versa. So the fact that I was that ready to want to be married after just a couple of weeks apart, that meant a lot to me. Yeah.
This is wonderful. I think this is
it's wonderful for you.
Yeah, it is wonderful for me. Yeah, it is wonderful.
It better be wonderful, Hilario. It better be wonderful.
It is wonderful for me. Like, look at me now. I'm glowing. But yeah, I think this is a good point for us to end the part one of our conversation. We'll be bringing you guys the second part of this conversation in another episode. If you're watching on YouTube, I am wearing an Arsenal jersey because there was an EPL fan fest in Center City in Dewar Park today, and I went to watch Arsenal for a period of time over there and meet some of the fans from all parts of the nation. So that was a really cool time. Maybe I can share some pictures on our Twitter, and you guys will see what we did on there. But anyway, if you're on YouTube, please subscribe if you like these conversations that we're having, and so that you can know when we release episodes. We are also on Spotify, Apple, wherever people listen to podcasts. I think you will find us there. So thank you, ladies, and I will give you guys a little break, and then we'll bring you back too. All right. See you guys.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.